Hello, today's Wednesday, May 29th, day 236. My name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Breaking news today is that Israel has taken military control of what's known as the buffer zone between Gaza and Egypt, the Philadelphia corridor. It says that it now has tactical control. This is the narrow strip of land that separates Gaza from Egypt. It was a key target of Israel's offensive. This means things are not only heating up in Rafah and Gaza, but between Egypt and Israel as well. It's very disconcerting. Egypt has said that if there's any increase in troops in the Philadelphia corridor, that this violates the peace accord from 1979. Egypt's already complained that Israel's taking over of the Rafah border crossing that happened previously, that was a violation of the peace agreement. We've heard from others that there was pressure from the United States and perhaps other foreign governments for Egypt to not make too much of a fuss about the border crossing itself, but the Philadelphia corridor is a whole nother ballgame. And Egypt, just in the last minutes, has said that they would not tolerate an increase of troops in that location. Remember, shots have already been fired directly between the Israeli Defense Forces and Egypt border control in the past few days, and an Egyptian officer was killed. As I was preparing this update today, my thought just kept being, Lord, have mercy. And so I almost feel like this is a prayer, Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy, with every update day after day. Today is day 236. Many of my updates today are from an organization called Crisis Action. We've done events with them in the past. They're incredibly credible. They have 5 things they said we need to be paying attention to. These are their top 5. All eyes are on Rafah, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, evidence of war crimes, and negotiations on the length of the war, and then legal news. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about each of those things. Many of you have reached out in response to these videos in terms of what can you do. Thank you so much for doing that. I've been talking about regional coordinators we have all over the country. I know someone reached out from Idaho, and we don't have a regional coordinator in Idaho. Hopefully that person will be willing to do that. But if you're interested in engaging with us, do send us a note at info@cmep.org. We have more than 25 or almost 30 regional coordinators, but only about 20 states represented. And it's our goal to be present in all 50 states. There's so much work to be done. And we're so grateful for all that you're doing, for those who donate and support our work. And I just want to say our call is for a comprehensive ceasefire, an end to all violence, an end to the ongoing massive killings, and further prevention of genocide in Gaza. And I hope when all of this is over, I can introduce you to our incredible staff. We can do meet and greets and talk to you about the many incredible programs we have, like End Still We Rise, that's working with women in the Middle East, and the ways we're committed to educate, elevate, and advocate. But for now, our priority is to stop further genocide, immediate and adequate humanitarian assistance to Gaza, to continue to call for the release of hostages that are held in Gaza, the release of prisoners that are held in Israeli jails without due process, and the demand to the return to the negotiating table so core causes can be addressed. So let's talk about what's happening in Rafah. You know that at least 45 people, mostly women and children, were killed on Sunday. Nearly 250 were injured in that Israeli airstrike that happened on Rafah. That was on Sunday. That was actually near an UNRWA logistics base. The Israeli army had previously identified the camp it bombed in Rafah as being within the safe zones where displaced people were urged to head. It was actually a safe zone. The army claimed the attack targeted a Hamas compound, and it said that a preliminary investigation showed that Palestinian civilians were killed by a fire that broke out in Rafah after an Israeli strike. CNN analysis showed U.S. munitions were used in the strike. Israeli shelling and airstrikes killed at least 37 people, most of them sheltering in tents outside of the southern city of Rafah overnight. And on yesterday, pummeling the same area where the strikes had triggered deadly fires earlier in a camp for displaced Palestinians. That was according to the Associated Press and witnesses by emergency workers and hospital officials. There have been such horrifying videos and images coming out of Rafah, fires burning, the video of the baby killed who was supposed to be beheaded. I've not watched that video. Reportedly, there are such graphic images showing death and destruction and horror. An Israeli strike targeted a group of civilians at the entrance of the Kuwaiti hospital in Rafah as well. And still, the White House says a red line has not been crossed. That should be one of our key messages. Where is this red line? Where's the red line? So call on Congress, and let them know that you're a Christian. Tell them that you're praying for them. Tell them that you're praying for President Biden. Where is this red line? How much death and destruction has to occur? 36,171 Palestinians killed, 81,420 wounded since the start. So American munitions, according to CNN, were used in the strike on Sunday night that caused that deadly blaze, 45 people killed. The New York Times said it was GBU-39 bombs that are thought to be more precise, and the US has encouraged Israel to use them to reduce civilian casualties. So this is the encouragement. This is the protection of civilians. This is what that looks like. Not good enough, US government, not good enough. Blinken called on the Israeli strike, which led to the death. He said it was horrific, and he said that Israel must conduct a deliberate but fast investigation. Not good enough, Secretary Blinken. Not good enough, President Biden. Sorry. White House National Spokesperson Kirby said nothing in the recent incidents in which civilians were killed would prompt the U.S. Nothing in the recent incidents would prompt the U.S. to withdraw military assistance to Israel. Nothing. What do we do with that? What's it going to take? And if they won't do it for the sake of Palestinians, do it for the sake of Israel. Do it for the sake of hostages. Do it for the sake of, U.S. interests in the Middle East. So this is really an opportunity for us to put pressure on the Biden administration. And particularly, we're a Christian organization, but particularly American Christians. We keep hearing from the U.S. administration and from the Biden administration and the White House and the officials that we've been meeting with that Christians do not support a ceasefire. And we know that we have, direct access to tens of thousands of constituents, and our groups have access to millions of Christians. We just know that's not true. And so I don't know if it's that we're just not identifying ourselves as Christians when we call members of Congress and when we call on the White House. So when you do, let them know that you're a Christian. Feel free to say Churches for Middle East Peace. We're calling for a comprehensive ceasefire. Let them know that we don't support this quote unquote war. And I think that's really, really important. If you need talking points, go to the Take Action section on our website. In terms of humanitarian access, we already talked about the US Pier that is such a joke. It's not working because of damage, because of bad weather. It's supposed to take about a week. 20 humanitarian groups warned that even with the pier, aid deliveries to and within Gaza remain woefully inadequate. The health system in Gaza has been effectively dismantled. Virtually every hospital has been issued evacuation orders, or they have run out of fuel, or they're going to run out of fuel or supplies very soon. The largest hospital, the Najjar, Yusuf al-Najjar, has been forced to shut down because of an evacuation order. Medical workers across Gaza say patients are dying daily due to shortage in medical supplies as doctors, nurses, and other health workers continue to be killed or forcibly displaced. Number 3, evidence of war crimes. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, will investigate war crimes on 3 separate strikes that killed 44 civilians, including 32 children, in the occupied Gaza Strip last month, according to Amnesty International. They said that the cases documented, these 3 cases, illustrate a clear pattern of attacks over the past 7 months where the Israeli military flouted international law, killing Palestinian civilians with total impunity and displaying a callous disregard for human lives. That was one of Amnesty's senior officials who said that. I would encourage you to take a look at Amnesty International's full report. Number 4, negotiations and the length of the war. We just keep hearing it's going to go on for a long time. There is a proposal, according to Qatar, Egypt, and Israel, and the US, that has been updated, but Hamas has said they're not willing to return to the table if the offensive on Rafah doesn't stop or if Israel doesn't end the war. Hamas has been consistent on this issue. They will not release the hostages if there's going to be continued fighting after they release the hostages. So this updated Israeli proposal includes a willingness to be flexible in terms of the number of living hostages that would be released first. There would be a humanitarian phase and the willingness to discuss a sustainable calm. What we've been hearing is that the Israelis are saying release the hostages and then the war is going to continue. And Hamas has been saying no. It doesn't sound like that. We've made much progress in that regard. I want to highlight, we've been hearing from numerous sources, including in the news, Israel's National Security Advisor, Hanegbi, that there's an expectation of prolonged fighting throughout 2024. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Number 5, in legal news, the International Court of Justice yesterday announced that it had received a request from Mexico to join the genocide case filed by South Africa. Several countries submitted requests, including Turkey, Libya, Nicaragua, and Colombia. That has been going on, and it has been reported that Israel has been spying on the ICC. So The Guardian and 972 magazine broke this investigative report that there's been more than a decade-long campaign of surveillance against the Hague-based court by Israel. One intelligence source said that Netanyahu has been obsessed with intercepts acquired by intelligence agencies from the court. Just a few other things. Algeria is circulating a proposal for a UN Security Council resolution that would demand an immediate ceasefire and an order for Israel to halt its offensive in Rafah immediately. The resolution demands the ceasefire be respected and calls for the immediate release of all hostages. Brazil's president said that he withdrew his country's ambassador to Israel, but Israel's foreign ministry said official notification has not been received. And the EU member states are considering recognizing a Palestinian state, several additional ones in the wake of Spain, Norway, and Ireland. So that has been reported. And in terms of the US and Israel, a meeting with Netanyahu, the GOP Senator Lindsey Graham called the International Criminal Court at The Hague a joke and its chief justice a raving anti-Semite. He said, we'll do all we can to hold the ICC accountable for this outrage against the people of Israel. In a separate meeting, Herzog, the president of Israel, thanked Graham for the fight against the abuse of the international legal allegations or the attacks against Israel. Israel's opposition leader, Lapid, met with two of his right-wing opposing opponents and is calling for the War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz to resign from the government and to join efforts to replace it. So they're holding a conference to say that Gadi Eskenat, who's a member of Gantz's National Unity Party, he has observer status of the War Cabinet, told a conference that Netanyahu's government has failed miserably to achieve its goals. From my understanding from the general public, most Israelis believe that to be true. Netanyahu is terribly, terribly unpopular in Israel right now, and that Israel urgently needs to hold an early election. Shots were fired at an Israeli community of Gan Nur. This is very close to the West Bank. Several homes were hit. Palestinians shot at this Israeli town that borders the West Bank. And a number of patients at a medical rehabilitation center many centers across Israel, the number of patients has increased dramatically. There's now 17,825 people, or that was the number the first 3 months after October 7th. That's 3 times. So in the first 3 months after October 7th, the number of people in rehabilitation centers tripled in just the first 3 months from the numbers that they saw in 2022. 3 Israeli soldiers were killed in combat in the Gaza Strip yesterday, and 2 protesters in Israel were arrested on Monday at an anti-war demonstration in the north of Israel in Haifa. They bore injuries when they appeared in the magistrate's court for a hearing. Often we have heard when people show up at court with injuries, it's an indication that there has been abuse or torture. We have heard that this happens all the time where Israeli military or police will arrest people, and on the process of their transfer from arrest to the court, that is one of the most dangerous times for prisoners or for people who have been detained. And so if they showed up bearing injuries, it's often an indication that they had been beaten in interrogation. 2 drones were intercepted that were believed to be from Lebanon at the northern border. Hostilities have continued. Fires have continued in Israel's north from attacks from Hezbollah, and the Houthis targeted 6 ships in 3 different areas along the Red Sea. I assume Iran's sea-launched ballistic missile Ghadar has been delivered. I don't know what that means. Sea-launched ballistic missile, the semi-official news agency reported. It sounds like a specific missile has been delivered to the Houthis. Sorry, I should have looked that one up in more detail. The Turkish president referred to Netanyahu as a maniac, psychopath, and a vampire that needs to feed on blood. That was in the news. So this is midweek, day 236. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Pray for peace as we continue in our efforts for those who have suffered trauma for far too long. May God continue to go before us.